Happy to see so many familiar faces, and to the media, nice to see some of you again. It's always nice to see all of you.
Others not so much.
Yeah. I'm just so pleased to be able to have the Premier here today to talk about many things, but of course the NOHFC and creating jobs here in the North. The Northern Ontario Heritage Fund has been instrumental for us here in Northern Ontario, creating jobs and helping businesses get off the ground and expand. So much so that we've been able to maintain or create 15,000 jobs here in Northern Ontario over the last few years, thanks to the investments that we're making as a government from the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. We're here today at Cross Cut, and Shane Prodan, Shane is right there, the owner of this fine facility, was a recipient of NOHFC funds. Across the street, we have Stack Brewery, and Sean from Stack is here as well. So welcome to Sudbury, everyone. You can get your vodka and gin on this side of the street and your beer on the other side. And it all is fantastic. You won't find anything better in Ontario than what you can get here and at Stack. We also have some other recipients here from NOHFC. We've got Mark Montefiore from Letterkenny and many other type of film and television productions that are done here in Sudbury. They're currently filming Bad Blood 2, which is another great production, so thanks for coming out. And we got Amélie? Geneviève. J'ai très proche. Mais des Places des Arts, et c'est une place culturelle et fantastique pour les Nord, pour les francophones dans toutes les Nord-Est. Et pour moi, c'est une place, c'est très important pour les cultures ici. And ultimately, for us, making sure that we can continue to invest in northern industries, in northern businesses, is so important. And we've got a great team that's doing that, talking about what we can do in the North to benefit the North. We've got the candidate from Nickel Belt, Tay Butt, and from Temiskaming Cochrane, we've got Brian Johnson. And together, all of us will continue to build the North, building Ontario up, building Northern Ontario up, and we have the leader and the Premier to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Premier of Ontario and the leader of our party, Kathleen Wynne.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici encore une fois parmi vous ici en Sudbury. And to Shane, thank you so much for the tour. This is awesome. Congratulations on your business. It is it's a beautiful, it's a start, right? You're just starting out, but it's a great example of how when government and entrepreneurs work together, really terrific things can happen. And to all of the recipients of NOHFC funding, thank you for being here. It is a great demonstration again of how investments in the North is creating jobs and building communities. So it's great to be back here in Sudbury. I've spent a lot of time in the North as Premier, and I am very happy to be here. It is very important to me that we work across the province, but particularly in the North, to listen to the community, to make sure that we are responding to the concerns in the North. And I have very effective voices on my team. The folks who are here today, but with Glenn Thibeault and Bill Morrow and Michael Gravel, who have sat in my cabinet, they're pretty relentless on Northern issues, if I can say. They are very, very clear about putting a Northern lens on the decisions that we make, and that is extremely important to me. And it has meant that we have made decisions that have benefited the North, and we will continue to do that. We've taken action, we've invested in the Northern economy to create jobs, and we've worked to diversify the economy. You know, when I first came, it was a couple of years ago when I came to the Letterkenny set, that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily 10, 15 years ago have thought about Sudbury as a hub for the diverse economy that it is now. And so whether it's tourism, whether it is the arts, those are the kinds of investments, and that's the future of Sudbury and the North. So since I became Premier, as Glenn has said, we've created and retained more than 15,000 jobs in the North by partnering with business through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation. And that partnership has in turn generated billions of dollars of economic activity, from healthcare innovation to tourism, as I said, to brewing and agri-food, to film and TV. The NOHFC has been helping to build the North up, and that's what we committed to do. And that's why in our plan we have committed to increasing NOHFC funding to $150 million a year by 2020, and that is a 50% increase to the current funding. So that will mean a continuation of the creation, retention, and expansion of jobs and businesses in the North. But the reality is that we're in an election campaign, and that is at risk. And it's really important that we understand that right now we do not have the same commitment from every party in this election. Andrea Horwath has been forced to admit major mistakes in her platform, and it's been widely reported that the NDP platform is full of errors and ideas that are going to put jobs at risk. That's the reality. And that includes the NDP's decision to cut $85 million from the NOHFC. The NDP is not looking out in terms of the NOHFC, is not looking at the benefits that the NOHFC has had for people in the North. And, you know, the reality is that the NDP has historically and currently seen the private sector as the enemy. You just have to look at their platform, look at how they talk about the relationship between government and the community. They do not see partnering with the private sector as part of their responsibility. I see that very differently. I think that government working with the private sector, working with entrepreneurs like the people who are standing behind us here, is exactly what government should do. I think that's actually how we foster economic growth, and the NOHFC has proven that to be exactly the case. So our plan is about helping every region to create jobs and make sure that the supports are there for the people to be able to be at their best and to be able to create those jobs. That's how the partnership between government and the private sector works. So when there's an ideology at play, as there is with the NDP, then that relationship puts at risk the possibility of creating those strong businesses. So in the North, that means that the unique needs of each community can't be addressed by a fund like the NOHFC if the NDP were to take power, because they have not made that commitment and they have removed $85 million from that. Now, the other side of the spectrum, if we look at Doug Ford, he just calls any relationship like this a corporate welfare, and I just categorically disagree with that. You know, again, this is about government working together with communities, with entrepreneurs, with business to make sure that they have what they need so that they can grow and expand. And that's what the NOHFC is about. I think what's happening right now is that people are increasingly coming to the conclusion that Doug Ford's plan to cut jobs, to slash services across Ontario is not the way that we want to go. That's what I'm hearing from candidates when I talk to them all over the province. And so people are taking a closer look at what we are putting forward and what the NDP is putting forward. And that scrutiny has been applied to us all along, and it is absolutely right that right now that same scrutiny would be applied to the NDP. The NDP promises a lot, but when you look at the math, look at the mistakes that have been made, and look at the inability to explain some of the mistakes that have been made, then I think that it's clear that there isn't a realistic plan coming from them. Interesting, one of the candidates that I was with this morning said, they're dreamers and we are doers. So I am going to continue to fight for the great jobs that are being created in the North. I am going to continue to fight to build communities up with the partnerships that we have established, and I look forward to that continuing for many years to come. Nous investissons dans le Nord pour créer des emplois, diversifier l'économie et créer de bonnes opportunités pour les jeunes. C'est pourquoi notre plan augmente le financement de la NOHFC, mais les emplois dans le Nord sont en danger dans cette élection. Le NPD veut couper dans le financement de la NOHFC. Cette élection est une bataille difficile, mais je suis énergisée parce que nous construisons ensemble. We've been building together, and that's what we know we can continue to do. Je vais continuer de parler de notre plan parce que l'NPD et les conservateurs veulent revenir en arrière dans le Nord. And we cannot afford to go backwards. So now I'm going to ask Shane to come forward and talk a little bit about his business and what he sees as the future here at Cross Cut. Shane?
Thank you, Premier Wynne. I'd like to welcome you, the other NOHFC recipients, as well as the rest of the community to Cross Cut Distillery here in Sudbury. It's our humble little distillery. We've been open about 6 weeks. We are a grain-to-glass facility. What that means is we make everything from scratch. It also means that we can buy all of our source inputs. So for those who saw the floor on the other side, I apologize, we got 7 tons of grains in this week. But what that means is that we're able to bring in our oats from the Temiskaming area. We're able to bring in our wheat from the Algoma area. We're able to bring in our corn from the Sudbury area and ultimately make some fine spirits. Add on to that, our botanicals can come from local farmers or my children picking them from the camp driveway. but it adds, it really makes it a northern product, and it's been great. But as many people know, there's definitely some familiar faces in the room. It's taken us a long time to get here, and we just really want to thank NOHFC for the assistance along the way. And when I talk about the assistance, we received financial assistance to transform this building, which was once a machining shop, so you can imagine what we started, to state-of-the-art food production facility. We have, NOHFC also helped us purchase the really cool hardware on the other side, the still, which is pretty amazing. But what that allows us to make is any product that's out there, and combine using local products with local talent. We've already proven that we can make products that rival anything on the top shelf of the LCBO. And it's pretty exceptional with a small group of people to be able to pull this off. So I'd just like to have everyone join me and thank NOHFC for supporting both agri-food in the north, as well as entrepreneurs like ourselves and those behind us in making things just a little bit easier to get off the ground.
Hear, hear. It's a great success story. Thank you very much, Shane, and congratulations. Félicitations. We're happy to take your questions now. Pourquoi? Parce que nous avons un plan pour continuer à investir dans le Nord, à travailler avec les communautés pour assurer que les communautés ont l'infrastructure, si c'est un investissement dans les routes, dans les ponts, ou c'est investir dans les entreprises comme c'est ici. Et cette plan est possible à implémenter, est réalistique. Et c'est pourquoi nous avons le plan qui est meilleur pour le Nord.
Kathleen, what sort of effect do you think the Sudbury by-election trial will have on voters here, particularly in Sudbury?
Well, probably have to ask the folks who are here. The people of Sudbury will make a decision. What I know is that Glenn Thibeault has been and is a wonderful representative for Sudbury. He works so hard. He knows the community so well. He has absolutely been a stellar and central part of my caucus and cabinet, and I believe people know that, and obviously the people of Sudbury will decide. But he's a fine man who has represented this community extremely well, and his values of community support. And Glenn sits at the cabinet table, he sits at the caucus table, and he, of course, has talked a lot about energy in the time that he has been at that table. But he talks about the needs of young kids. He talks about the needs of people with disabilities. He understands the needs of housing needs and poverty reduction. So he has a total grasp of the needs of the society in the North and beyond.
Ford was asked today when the PCs will release their platform. He said it will be sometime before the election, but he wasn't specific. I'm wondering what you think of that statement, and do you think that people need more time to take a look at what the PCs have to offer, specifically in the form of a platform?
Well, I think that people rightfully are asking what exactly Doug Ford is proposing he would do. We know from some of the slogans and the things that he has thrown out that if he is going to move on those things, he's going to have to make cuts across government between $6 and $12 billion. But we have no idea where those cuts would come from. We have no idea what the implications would be for schools in the North, all over the province, for healthcare services. We have no idea what those cuts would mean. We know that they would be very, very dangerous for communities and for families, but we don't know the specifics. And so I think that he owes it to the people of Ontario to be much clearer about what he's proposing. So, we'll obviously, you'll keep asking him when he's going to bring that information forward. But if people are going to make an informed decision, they need to have specifics about what he's proposing.
What about the poll numbers? I mean, most polls have been tracking now the Liberal Party in third place, and it's kind of a two-way race now between the PCs and the NDP. Is there a way to turn this around in the next 2 weeks for you?
Well, as I said, I do believe that what's happening is that people are looking at, even though he hasn't put out a plan of any sort, they're listening to the slogans that Doug Ford has put forward. They're listening to what, or inferring from that what it might mean in terms of cuts to the services that they rely on. And I think more and more people are saying that's not the way I want to go. I mean, people come up to me and up to our candidates and say, I just don't think that Doug Ford is going in a direction that we should go in. So because that's happening, then people are looking at, well, what is it that the Liberals have put forward? What is it that the NDP is putting forward? And so that scrutiny is now turning to the NDP because, as I say, we've been under a lot of scrutiny. And we went into this election understanding that this was going to be a tough election for us. We knew that. We know we've been in office for a long time. That's not news to us. But we also know that we've been building this province. Month after month, we've been making investments. We have been steadily working to build the economy that we see now. And of course, the private sector has contributed enormously to that. And it's the private sector that makes those jobs possible and creates those jobs. But government is a partner. So government builds the infrastructure, whether it's roads, whether it's bridges, whether it's schools or hospitals. We've built 800 new schools, 24 hospitals across this province, roads and bridges and transit. And so we've been doing that work hand in hand with communities, with the private sector. And so that is what we are bringing to the table. The work that we've already done and the plan that we are bringing forward that actually takes the next step in that building up of the province. So I think we're in a period right now in the election where, rightly, people are saying, well, if I'm not going to go with Doug Ford, then what am I going to do? And looking at us again and looking at the NDP. And that's why it's so important that, I, as the leader of the Liberal Party, make it clear what we're going to do, which I have done and I will continue to do, but I also have to be part of that shining a light on what the NDP is saying. You know, whether it is shutting down the Pickering plant so that 4,500 people at least would lose their jobs right away, people would, you know, by the end of August be turning the light switch on in their house and not necessarily having the light come on, because that plant is part of a plan. It's part of a long-term energy plan. And so she, you know, the NDP, Andrea at the helm of the NDP have just said recklessly, we'll just shut that down by August. Or whether it's what she said yesterday, that she can never imagine a situation where back-to-work legislation, she would bring in back-to-work legislation, that she would support back-to-work legislation. Never. She can't imagine a time. Well, you know, and what that means is that there's a strike, and all of the options, all of the tools have been used, the collective bargaining has played itself out, and there's nowhere else to go, then the provincial government would not have that tool that would actually, for example, in the case of York University, get those kids back into school. I believe in collective bargaining process. But once you've gone through all the processes, and if there is an ongoing impasse, government needs to have a tool to end that and get people back at work and back into class. So those kinds of reckless ideas have to be examined in this period, because, you know, this is a very important election. We are literally, as a province, deciding on what the future of this province is going to look like. And I know every election is important, but this one in particular, because of the uncertainty of the global economy, because of what's going on in the United States, because of the protectionism that we are seeing, because of climate change, because of technological change, these are all forces that we can't afford to say, well, we're just going to sit this one out. We're going to sit back for a while, for a few years, and just let things be a little bit chaotic, and that'll be okay. We cannot lose 1 year. We have to continue to make those investments. We have to stay on top of what's happening on all of those fronts, because otherwise the world just passes us by. You know, we can't be trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. We've been building the electricity system in this province so that the lights would come on. Don't shut down the Pickering plant and undermine all that work that's been done. We've been building relationships. Let's not destroy those relationships. So that's what this election is about. It's very, very important.
You're here to have a strong northern economy, and on the campaign trail you often see job numbers throughout the province and so on. But some research from Mike Moffat shows that that growth over the years has predominantly come in the GTA and in the Kingston, Ottawa region, and so on, and that regions of the province like Northern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, and so on, have been kind of left behind in some of that growth. Why will the Liberal policies in another term, why will those provide better results than we've seen in the past?
Well, I mean, that is a great question, because it points exactly to why the NOHFC is so important. It points exactly to why anyone who wants to lead this province has to have a regional economic development plan. So, you know, we're increasing the NOHFC. The NDP has left $85 million out of the NOHFC. We have to make sure that we recognize the forces that are at work. The economy's changing. I mean, Glenn and Brian and Tay know that. Shane knows that. Everyone standing behind me knows that. These are people who live in the North. They know that it's changing. So I will continue to fight the fight on softwood lumber. I will continue to work to open up mining opportunities in this province. But I also have to recognize that as the leader of the government, that we need to have a broader strategy than that. You know, we need the diversification that comes with the regional investments. So that's what the NOHFC is about. And there are some forces that we can control and there's some that we can't. But we're working on all fronts to influence and control as many as we can. You know, 15,000 jobs either created or retained by NOHFC investment. That's a significant, significant success story, and we're going to continue to make that kind of decision that is based in the evidence of what works.
Can I add something?
Yeah, do you want to add? Yeah.
I just wanted to add something to the growth of Northern Ontario. We have Mark here from Letterkenny. Just in Sudbury and area alone, we've invested through the NOHFC. We've created about 1,500 jobs in the film and television industry, and that's happening in North Bay and in Sault Ste. Marie, and they're heading up to places like Timmins. So we're seeing not just a resource-based economy happening, but a diversification of our economy in the north, and that's thanks to the NOHFC and the leadership of our government to be able to recognize that we have talent and we have skill up here, and we're expanding that. We're seeing more in the tourism sector. We've talked about a $16 million announcement here for Science North that is now going to take science and science projects throughout the north and actually create opportunities and teach young children about science and technology and get them engaged, because we know we have more and more junior mining companies looking for lithium, which is the actual power that we're going to see that's going to help us with storage. So there are plenty of opportunities that are happening here. The NOHFC is all about that, and we truly are the only party that has a plan for the north. We have a Northern Ontario plan that talks about growth and development and creating jobs. It isn't something that you can peel off and then put Eastern Ontario on and forget about taking off Northern Ontario. This is a specific plan for Northern Ontario that has growth, it has development, it has all of the opportunities that we know that we need up here to continue to diversify. No other party has that. The other parties are talking about Eastern Ontario and Northern Ontario as being interchangeable, and one of them doesn't even know where Sudbury is when they're in the Sioux. Please, people, this is the party that knows the north. We're going to make sure that we develop it.
And that.
Coming up on Sunday, can you just tell us how you're approaching that and what will be, how it might work out differently for you or the other leaders on Sunday night?
You want me to predict? I am approaching the debate on Sunday in the same way that I approach this campaign, which is that we have a very, very strong record. I will be talking about the things that we have done and the successes that we have seen across this province that have allowed the economy to grow, and I will be then talking about how we can keep that momentum going and the next steps in the investments that will allow everyone in this province to have the care that they need, but also to have the opportunity that they need. That is the story of this election for us. You know, this is the momentum that we have built as a government that has contributed to and has fostered the economic growth that we're seeing, and we want to now take the next step to continue that and invest in the care that people need so that they can be at their best.
Some clients of 47 have started receiving letters saying that their information might have been taken or were taken. Now there's some allegations floating around, and the police still refusing to just answer some questions or what the parties doing about that.
Yes, and I've been very clear that we believe that Doug Ford, as the leader of the Conservatives, must be accountable for this. He must step forward. He must call for and participate in a full investigation, both by the police and by Elections Ontario. And quite frankly, you know, he has said that this happened under the leadership of Patrick Brown. Well, if that's the case, I don't understand why he would then not want to have that investigation happen. And, you know, that raises questions about, you know, what does he know? What's the risk for him in just coming forward and being accountable? We know that he said in February that there were 40 nominations that needed to be looked at. Well, he needs to step up and be accountable for that investigation. Chaque jour, nous avons des nouvelles allégations et plus de questions. Doug Ford, comme leader, doit adresser ces questions et participer dans une enquête parce que c'est son responsabilité comme leader.
You've mentioned mining. What is your plan during the fire?
Well, we are engaged in the building of the infrastructure for the Ring of Fire. You know, what we know is that unless there is a road and a way to get those minerals out, then there can't be that economic development of the Ring of Fire. And we've been working very closely with the 9 Matawa First Nations to come to an agreement to build that road. We've worked with the companies, and we have that agreement. The road, the planning for the road has begun, and that was exactly the point that we needed to get to. We have $1 billion that we are beginning to invest in the building of that infrastructure. It is there, it is allocated, and we are very determined to make sure that that economic development benefits the communities that are most closely associated geographically, but the benefits flow across the north. But we are going to do this in a way that is responsible, both environmentally and economically. That means making sure that, as I say, the communities that are most affected geographically are benefiting, and also that that communities across the north benefit.
Last question here, guys.
Premier, your new campaign ad out today.
Yes.
I can do better. What are you trying to communicate to people there? I mean, is that a tacit acknowledgement that, I mean, there have been a lot of errors that have been made by this government?
It's an acknowledgement that, and at the end of the ad I say, better never stops. The fact is there's always the possibility of doing better and doing more. And I talk in the ad about the things that we have done. The free tuition for 235,000 students, the way we've built the province up, and then I end it by saying better never stops. And that is exactly the way we have governed, is that we are constantly looking for ways to improve the lives of people in this province, to address the needs that they've brought to us. Okay, thanks everybody. Merci.